Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of the Russian invasion podcast known as RIP. This is Alex speaking, and I'm actually currently filling in Dag Guessford for reading this debrief as he is currently unavailable. The information in this debrief is accurate as of April 11, 2022. The information was supplied by the Associated Press. Now, the EU is phasing in restrictions on Russian coal but has refrained from restrictions on Russian oil, despite pushes by Irish Foreign Minister Simon Convey. Defense systems, most likely the S-300 sent to Ukraine by Slovakia. However, the Slovakians say they have not received confirmation of this development from Ukraine. South Korea voted against sending military support to Ukraine. Ukrainian President Vladimirs Zelensky made a speech thanking South Korea for participating in the economic sanctions against Russia, but said that economic sanctions alone would not be enough. Now on to the actual interview.
What do you think of Vladimir Putin and Vladimir Zelensky?
What I think of Vladimir Putin and Zelensky is, first of all, I'm going to start with Putin. I think Putin is like, how would I say? Maybe he's bullying Ukraine into giving up territory, and he had premeditated actions by just out of nowhere invading Ukraine and taking just the land for no prominent reason, but for just his own self pleasure and just having more land and recreating the Soviet Union. He's just trying to create the Soviet Union so then he can have what he wants, which is power and money and famousness. So that's why he's taking the Ukraine. But in Zelensky, he's a very honorable leader because he's encouraging these citizens to fight in the war, and his citizens have high morale because of his wonderful leadership, and he's even trying to have leadership and encourage peace, even though it's probably not really that possible, but he's still trying.
Thank you. What do you think is going to happen in the future after this, after the Russian invasion? How do you think this will de-escalate? Do you think Ukraine will end up getting taken by Russia?
There's a good chance they will, but as of now, it doesn't look like it will be taken because their progress is going slow. But Russia, we never know what happens with Russia. I mean, Russia could all of a sudden have a secret arsenal of weapons, but we don't know for sure. But I'm pretty sure annexation is probably the most likely thing with all the territory that Russia has so far. And de-escalation, it may happen, but it would take a long time to happen. And peace talks probably will not happen. If peace talks do happen, it could start a World War III. I mean, much like the Treaty of Versailles from World War I, and it created World War II. So to make another treaty, it could possibly create a World War III.
Do you support Ukraine or Russia, and why?
I would support Ukraine because I support Ukraine because they are the ones who are defending the country honorably, and all citizens are fighting and just going to local police stations and taking weapons so then they can defend it for their country. And that's an honorable thing to do, fighting for your country, very patriotic. And Ukraine's leader, Zelensky, is also trying to protect his citizens and give them high morale. And in Russia, I'm not supporting them because they have premeditated. They're killing children, they're killing civilians, and they're lying. Putin's lying about attacking civilians. Over 1,800 civilians have been killed, over 60 children. So it's really Russia who's killing innocent civilians when they should not be, because they're attacking. Russia's also attacking churches, which are worship places, which is against the law. And Putin should be tried for war crimes too. And if he does get tried for war crimes, he should get the highest possible sentence there is for his war crimes.
Thank you. So, one quick question. What do you think this invasion has in its impact to the rest of the world's general well-being, world relations, and why do you think NATO countries have been so hesitant to get themselves involved, and do you think they will have to eventually, or do you think they can avoid it?
NATO has been hesitant because Russia did threaten if NATO defends it, people see consequences they've never seen before. So Russia's been not Russia, but NATO has been pretty hesitant into going against Russia. But I'm sure it will happen eventually because eventually people will realize this. Putin will eventually lose the war because no one country could win by themselves though. So eventually NATO will get involved eventually, and the impact on the world will be pretty big. And because first of all, economic things having to do with the what do you call it? fertilizer, the gasoline, oils, prices are skyrocketing higher than they were in 2008. But now they're not trying to lower because of the 1 million barrels a day bill that was signed. And the impact is not going to be going away anytime soon because economic sanctions on Russia will hurt it for years to come. The U.S. will have to recover. Every country that hasn't been involved economically will have to take time to recover.
What additional statements do you have regarding the invasion?
With additional statements that Ukraine should possibly join NATO, so then we could defend Russia, because eventually all our countries will go against Russia and then will invade. I mean, everyone's against Russia. Even China is not offering to defend for Russia, and Russia and China are pretty big allies, and China's not even trying to defend Russia. Just staying out of it.
That was a pretty cool interview. So now we're just on to the free talk session. So first, Dag, take it away.
Yeah, so I was interested, you were talking that you think NATO has to get involved eventually.
Yeah.
Do you think there's not an outcome where NATO doesn't get involved, and where do you think this would lead? Is it possible that Russia does not take Ukraine even without NATO involvement, or will there have to be military action by NATO if we want to prevent that?
The only circumstance I can think of where NATO will not get involved is if Ukraine beats Russia, or either Russia pulls down because of the economic sanctions that they are suffering. And Russia, I highly doubt Russia is going to stop dismantle its forces from entering Ukraine. But the only way that this will stop is without NATO getting involved is Ukraine just beating Russia.
I feel like that Ukraine actually has kind of a solid chance. Like, there is obviously international support. Russia's whole thing about, just NATO is kind of backfired, because now reports say that Finland and Sweden might be joining NATO as soon as this summer, which is insanely soon. But I feel like that obviously Russia has already started de-escalating, because now they're just focusing on the East Donbass region. I probably butchered that pronunciation, but they're just focusing on that. So I feel like they might just I don't think it's going to go on for much longer. I feel like that's going to end soon. But then again, that was that's what I thought COVID too in 2020. So yeah.
Definitely. And I'm not sure as well how much more information do the people leading have than we do, and where they're seeing going. But so, how you were talking about having Ukraine beating Russia on its own. How likely do you think that is to happen?
Chances are low because Russia has hundreds of thousands of soldiers, and Ukraine had 200,000 compared to Russia's about 1 million soldiers. Chances are low, but chances of Ukraine beating Russia on its own are not high, but they're not low. They do have a chance, but chances of being alone are maybe 50-50. They definitely have a very high chance if international support is on the way, such as NATO or any other groups.
Yeah, totally. I feel like, I wonder if NATO is going to ever impose a no-fly zone. I really feel like that they should, because they're the literal key point of this thing. I just stopped there for a second. I can. Yeah. So a no-fly zone would probably be nice. I wonder what the other impacts of everything would be on aviation also, because I feel like that's very interesting in terms of that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We've already seen rising jet fuel prices and flights that no longer able to fly over Russia going around or somewhat canceling service completely. Not sure how much of an effect it's going to have coming out of COVID. It was looking like a very strong travel summer. We're not sure how much of an effect, along with the labor shortages, is going to have on the airlines. But I'm not sure how important that is right now, as much as getting people safely out of Ukraine and protecting Ukraine. And it is clear that if it were to be a full attack, U.S. alone has more, specifically air power, than Russia, and combined with other NATO forces and Ukraine, it would be very interesting what would happen specifically in the air. Though, again, if NATO were to join, they'd have to be very careful to make it not attacks on Russia so as not to provoke a larger conflict. How easy do you think would it be to provoke a larger conflict?
Provoking more conflict with Russia is very, very likely. Because of one wrong move done, there could be lots of damage to like the conflict. Yeah, there was so much damage to the conflict. Because I mean, even just once a small thing is like maybe like flying a plane over Russia. That's Ukraine's plane. That just doing that can really start a conflict with Russia.
Yeah. I do wonder also what like the space fighting thing is also going to be, because Russia has kind of just like absolutely stopped basically all civilian like launches, and now they're just launching military things. And I also have to wonder about like ESA and Roscosmos's European Space Agency and Russian Space Agency, like their ExoMars like rover and lander thing, which was supposed to land on Mars this year. I wonder if that's going to happen, or if ESA is just going to have like their rover just hitch ride on a different vehicle. But international collaboration is definitely going to be very shaky in the future. What's you guys' stance on that?
Yeah, I'd also be interested to know what's going on in things like the ISS, where people from Russia, people from the U.S., they rely on each other to live out there. I think it's very fragile, and hopefully, even though there's this conflict going on, we manage to maintain peace and recognize that we don't want people dying, and we don't want that. So, continuing cooperation in a way that also assists Ukraine is an interesting balance.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have many ways where we maintain peace with Russia, as you said, with the ISS. But there's like other ways we maintain peace with Russia, because we still do some trading with them, but most of it is cut off. Like especially the oil is really cut off, and that's seen at our gas pumps right now. So overall, I think peace with Russia is really not likely, but I'm sure within maybe a few years, maybe a decade or so, that we can maintain peace enough that we just don't. We're not allies, but we're getting along at least.
Yeah, maintain peace with Russia would be very hard. But like with the Russian oil thing, that's only like 2% of the U.S.'s oil. I think, yeah. But speaking of the ISS, recently, a couple weeks ago, some Russians flew up to the International Space Station, and their spacesuits actually had the colors of Ukraine. But that was actually just kind of weird coincidence, because they went to the same college which had those like same colors. But anyway, yeah. So I wonder, yeah, how do you guys think that we will maintain peace with Russia in the future? Yes, like other than just like stopping sanctions, I guess, which probably would do anything.
I'm assuming that the most likely way is that Putin gets removed from power, because I think we've heard over and over that most people are thinking it's not a war from the Russian people. So if Putin was to be removed from power, it would probably change things a good deal. And possibly that's the most likely route. How likely do you think it is that he is removed from power, and how do you think it would happen?
I mean, right now, as it looks like right now, Putin has had over 10,000 people arrested for protesting the war. And so that definitely proves it's Putin's war, not the citizens' war, because the citizens are protesting, most citizens are protesting against it. And I saw a video of a Russian cop like beating on an old lady, like an old, like 70-year-old lady with the stick things. And so this is definitely Putin's war, and Putin's in his oligarchs' war. So the only way for that to be removed is to either economically wipe out Putin and oligarchs, or to assassinate them, or to have them removed from power.
I feel like that the citizens also kind of might revolt. Like I feel like that yeah, like obviously they've been protesting. Like you said, that they've been arrested. Yeah, so the citizens of Russia are probably going to like maybe try to coup, but that might be kind of very hard. But it does seem like the citizens are mad, even if they only think that's a special military operation, because Russia's been trying very hard and trying to be both patriotic and also just trying to basically block communication from other countries on what the war actually is. So I feel like that, like, the citizens are already mad, and they're just going to get very, very angry when they like start to learn what's been happening in Ukraine and just the atrocities that have been happening there.
Yeah, and who knows? The CIA could already have detachments out, trying to assassinate Ukraine. I have no Putin. I have no evidence for that, by the way. It could be happening. It's not that I'm saying it is.
I mean, I do think there's some U.S. or NATO intelligence in Russia, like speaking data. I mean, that's definitely a possibility. But if that does happen, and if they do get caught, that could be a lot more conflict. But overall, I think there's a good chance of seeing the capture evidence.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the CIA, like, in terms of that. I feel like that the U.S. has been very cautious on what to say if they're doing stuff. Like they still don't officially say that Taiwan is a country. Because they don't really. They're still kind of trying to be a bit neutral. So I don't think that the CIA is going to kill Putin. There is a lot of other things.
They definitely don't want to do it and have people know they did it. I mean, if you look what they've done in the past, though, in Cuba, with the Bowl of Pigs operation and things, it's certainly a possibility now. What the current administration plans to do with that, I don't know. And it's certainly a tough situation, a delicate balance, and I'm not sure there's a perfect balance point even. I'm not sure anything is going to work out perfectly. I think it's give and take, and there's not a perfect answer.
Still back to Cuba, the CIA has tried to assassinate Fidel Castro before the CIA, so the same thing could be happening with Russia. Because either they have similar ideologies and the communist ideologies. They're similar, but they're a little different. But overall, they're mostly similar. And Fidel Castro had multiple assassination attempts. But none of them were successful, but it is definitely possible that Russian leader Vladimir Putin may be assassinated, or at least attempted to be assassinated by the CIA.
Yeah. I feel I'm not really sure about the assassination thing. Yeah, definitely does Fidel Castro, their ideologies seem to be similar. I'm really not sure. I'm not sure if Putin is communist. He hasn't really shown that. Obviously, part of the communist ideology is just kind of giving money to the people and stuff. Not really, but Putin hasn't really been following that. He's mostly just been being what has been described as a tyrant or dictator, not necessarily communist, but yeah.
Yeah, I think he shares the tyranny, but he doesn't care what the economic system is in Russia. That's not his point. He just wants to have the power. So whether it's communist, capitalist, or even anarchist, as long as he has the power, he doesn't care what's going on there.
I mean, all these people want to try to open up countries upon power. Same thing with the dictators of World War II. All they wanted was power, really. And people who are the power hungry, usually they end up losing or on the bad side of the war, and end up having land taken away, having to pay huge war reparations, and having to go to prison for war crimes, which will probably happen to Putin when the war de-escalates. I'm pretty certain that he'll be tried for war crimes.
Putin probably will be charged for war crimes, but Russia and even the U.S. don't even recognize the International Court of Criminals, and we don't I'm not really sure if representatives from the UN or just people in general are going to be able to capture Putin from Russia somewhere. without their own special military operation, quote unquote. So, yeah, he'll probably be in charge of war crimes. But the future going forward, like, obviously, if Ukraine is captured, what do you guys think will happen? Like, will Russia try to expand their sphere of influence? Maybe it will become like a kind of like Cold War in a way again.
Yeah, when you look back at World War II, people point, after the first country was taken, Germany went to take more, we pushed back, we stopped them. But I don't think that's likely here again because we're in this weird state of possibility of nuclear war where nobody wants to go out and fight. But we've seen wars fought in the era of nuclear bombs, like the Vietnam War and such like. We've seen it happen, it's certainly possible, but I think if there is broader attacking against Russia, it won't have the support of the people of the United States, just like we saw in past wars like Vietnam War, because that's not what the people of the U.S. generally want. They don't want to be involved in external conflict unless they absolutely have to, and I think that's kind of recognized in what the administration has done relating to the war in Ukraine. They've done some sanctions, but they're trying to be very careful because they know another war is not wanted after just pulling out of Afghanistan.
So about Ukraine being captured by Russia, I'm pretty sure Russia will move on to probably take Poland and probably rest of Eastern Europe. Because that's what history has taught us. Like, basically, if a powerful dictator takes one country, they usually want more countries and more land and power. Same thing happened in both world wars. That happened in the Cold War, but there was no war. But there's like power hungry. Like the Vietnam War, people want more power. Korean War and the East German War. Everyone just wanted power. The dictators wanted power. Whilst the U.S. and the Allied side were trying to maintain peace and trying to work with the people who are dictators, but dictators refuse because all they again want is power. And if they cooperate, that means they lose some of their power. So dictators probably not going to cooperate.
Yeah, Putin's definitely not going to cooperate. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on here. That was Jacob Shin, an 8th grader here at Frost Middle School. Jacob, this was a pretty cool podcast, episode 1. So stay tuned for more episodes.
Yes, thanks for having me do this podcast, and I'll be happy to get more podcast that you take with other students in the school.
Alright, thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening. If you would like to be interviewed, please scan the QR code or click the link in the description or comments. Once again, thank you for listening, and we'll see you in episode 2.